Namaskar. Good evening to all. Welcome to our Virasat Talk program being organized by Heritage Society Patna. Today it's our 87th edition of the Virasat Talk program, and with us today it's our privilege to welcome and introduce Shri Siv Prasad Khened sir, from currently acting as director in Nehru Science Center, Ministry of Culture, Government of India. Sir is live directly from Mumbai. Today, we have a very relevant and topic for the Virasat Talk program. Today, sir will be speaking on technological heritage of India. And India, since we know, has a very rich cultural diversity and has a very long history of more than 5,000 years with much development in all of the fields such as archaeology, astronomy, medicines, logic, and several other disciplines. And we have such a rich and long history of technological heritage and scientific heritage, with science cities and science centers coming up in the post-independence era, having a rich tradition of preserving this technological heritage of India. So we have, it is our distinct honor and privilege that with us we have Dr. Shri Prasad Khened sir, who has joined us already. Welcome you, sir. Shri Siv Prasad Khened sir is an electronics and communication engineer who started his career with the multinational companies such as Hewlett Packard and Intel. He then joined the government service in 1986 and has ever since been working with the National Council of Science Museums. He has served as the director of National Science Center, New Delhi, Visvesvaraya Industrial and Technological Museum, Bangalore, and currently he is working as the director of Nehru Science Center, Mumbai, which is one of the premier institution and one of the largest science center in India. Shri Khened has also shouldered additional responsibility of director of National Gallery of Modern Art, Mumbai, for 6 years. He has published more than 100 articles in reputed national and international journals on touching several topics of history of science and history of technology in ancient India. He has also presented papers in national and international science museum and science communication conferences. He has published more than 150 blog posts on various subjects. He has also published 5 books and monograms. His articles regularly are published in leading journals of and newspapers of India such as Science Reporter, Dream, One India, One People, Invention, Intelligence, The Hindu, and many other. Shri Khened was responsible for the establishment of 3 new science centers in Regional Science Center, Dharwad, Regional Science Center, Coimbatore, and Regional Science Center, Pilikula. He has also established 4 new science innovation and activity centers in Maharashtra. He is currently involved in the development of a science center in Kottayam and Udaipur. He has curated several well-researched science and culture exhibitions, some of which include our science and technology heritage, technological heritage, Sri M. Visvesvaraya Ramanujam, Information Revolution, Human Biology, 100 Years of Nobel Prize, Human Genome, and beyond, and touched a large number of topics that exhibits the multifacets of the technological heritage of ancient India. He was part of the team which established the National Museum of Indian Cinema in Mumbai. He has curated 3 international exhibitions as part of the Festival of India Cricket Connects in South Africa, Australia, and England. Sri Khened was the sole India coordinator for the acclaimed Illuminating India 5,000 Years of Science and Innovation in India exhibition, which was presented at the Science Museum, London. He is a member of National Committees of Culture and Scientific Institutions, including National Steering Committee on Science Olympiads, National Screening and Evaluation Committee, International Museum Exhibitions Committee. During his tenure as director of NCMA, he was responsible for organizing several art exhibitions of national and international repute. He is the recipient of several prestigious national and international awards, such as 16th NES National Award instituted by Sri Jayendra Saraswati Sankaracharya Kachi. He was nominated for the prestigious Eastern Eye Arts, Culture and Theatres Award, England, for the curation of the cricket exhibition. He has a very long experience of many years and has served responsibilities in his administrative capabilities as well as academic capabilities. And if we go on telling about Shiv Prasad sir, it will have an endless notes on his achievements. So I will not take much time, and I will request Shri Prasad Khened sir to kindly begin the session. And today we have the topic of technological heritage of India. We are looking forward to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for your kind introduction. I'll start sharing the screen and then speak on. At the outset, it gives me immense pleasure to deliver this lecture. And for that, I should thank Dr. Anand Ashutosh Dwivedi ji, and of course, the host today, Dr. Ajad Hind Gulshan Nanda, for very kindly inviting me to deliver this interesting lecture. It's called as Virasat Talk. I like this series, the Virasat Talk series. This is, I think, I understand it is the 87th of the series of talks under this series. So it's an honor for me to be a part of this wonderful initiative by the Heritage Society in Patna. So at the very outset, you can just have a look at the first slide, Technology Heritage of India. I mean, I will be particularly highlighting on two aspects of it, iron and steel, and of course the Delhi Iron Pillar, which has remained restless in Delhi. My colleague, I think Ajad ji just now informed about 5,000 years of rich history of the science and technology and innovation. That's perhaps one of the reasons why India was Sone ki Chidiya, if you really call it that way. Several people from abroad, the invaders came to invade India, particularly because of the richness that the country had. The richness of the country primarily stems from the developments in science, technology, and innovation. Again, we have a glorious history in science and technology. Some of us read, even in the schools also, going back to what we call as the Harappan civilization. Of course, when initially the first site was excavated in Harappa, the civilization was called as a Harappan civilization. But now we know there are more than hundreds of such sites which belong to that the Indus Valley civilization. The Indian civilization has, of course, a long recorded history of achievements in science and technology, which goes back actually more than 5,000 years. I've specifically used this word 5,000 years because some of us in India, or rather several of us in India, are aware of our rich heritage. But when it comes to the outsiders recognizing our contribution, unfortunately, it is not the case. China, India, and Mesopotamia, Egypt, these are the countries which ancient civilization which have contributed to the overall growth of science and technology and the developments of the world. Unfortunately, when you talk about the developments, it's always the Western-centric, European-centric approach that is seen. Most of the science and technology, or the rich heritage of the world, starts with what we call as the Greek and Roman Empire, and then it suddenly fast forwards by several centuries and goes to the period of Renaissance. And then we are taught that what we call as the scientific revolution, or the technological contributions to the world order, comes primarily from Greek, Rome, or the European civilization. But that has not been the case. We all know that India is one of the countries, along with China, to have contributed. I'm sure most of you must have read, whenever the India Science Congress happens every year, there will be one or the other controversies that's coming out regarding the claims of Indians. Of course, there are some overboard claims that are sometimes perpetuated. That overboard claims, unfortunately, try and brush aside the real achievements that India has made. Fortunately, for the past several decades, there are several scholars, both in India and abroad, who have been researching on the Indian contribution. Courtesy their immense contribution and research, the world has now come to recognize that India was one of the country which has made immense contribution, particularly in terms of science, technology, and innovation. Well, it is not just enough that we ourselves, we as Indians, recognize our contribution and be proud about the legacy that we have, which it is mandatory that our youngsters should carry this forward and continue to grow in stature and aspire to be the developed nation, which Abdul Kalam ji, when he was the president, he used to keep on telling that India must be a developed nation in 20 years, 2020, maybe 2035 should be the time when we should be in that league and beyond. What happened is, the Britishers ruled us for a very long time. We passed through that colonial period. And if you really, some of us are aware, the Britishers normally used to talk about they have come to civilize us. But the same very country which left us when we attained independence in 1947 and felt that India as a country, as a democracy, will not be able to survive perhaps beyond 1 or 2 decades. But then where are we? In just about 7 decades, we have come a very long way. Even the Britishers, our colonial rulers, perhaps have recognized this aspect. And in 2017, when we were celebrating the 70 years, 7 decades of our independence, there was a request from the London Science Museum to the Government of India, to the Ministry of Culture, that they are exhibiting an exhibition known as Illuminating India, 5,000 Years of Science, Technology and Innovation. So we from India actually contributed certain objects which went from here to India. And I was privileged to be the national coordinator for this exhibition which happened in London. So we will start with this exhibition. So this was an exhibition which started somewhere in October 2017 and ended somewhere in end of April 2018. The Honorable Prime Minister had been to London for participating in the Commonwealth countries meeting. He spared time to go and visit this exhibition at the London Science Museum. I'll give a small glimpse of some of the objects which were part of this exhibition. See, you can see the Prime Minister visiting this exhibition along with the High Commission of India and, of course, the curator of the exhibition and also the chief executive of the London Science Museum. You'll see in this here, for example, this is known as the Baksali manuscript. This is the only object which gives you the earliest evidence of 0 being used as a number. So I will talk about this a little bit later also. And again, this is another object of talking about the astronomical astrolabes and things like that. Now, when coming to this object, all of us know that, without the decimal place value number system, it's impossible for any commerce to survive. But we take this for granted. And at least in my days, when I studied in my school, we studied this number system, the decimal place value number system, as Arab numbers. Imagine, we were the people who actually contributed, or we discovered and passed on our knowledge to the world order. But then we Indians ourselves were, at least some of us were reading this as Arabic numbers. But what happened is there was one great scientist, great mathematician, George Certain, from Oxford and Cambridge. He did extensive research on the number system, and then he was actually working on the contributions of Greek and Roman. In the process of doing that, he realized that the decimal place value number system actually have gone from India to Arab. The Arab scholars have taken it to other countries. So when the Britishers were ruling us, one of the objects that they carried, if you really, any one of you who has been to the British Museum, you will find that the British Museum, or for that matter, any other museums in the world, will have a lot of technological and scientific objects which are from India. So that in itself speaks of the glorious history and technology, particularly in terms of science and technology in India. Again, I understand it is the Heritage Society, and most of you are associated with archaeology. You're all aware of this. For example, either the Indus Valley civilization. Initially, it was only the Mohenjo-daro and Harappa. Now we know Dholavira. Professor Dr. Bish has excavated this. It is in Gujarat. Fortunately, courtesy Amitabh Bachchan, who is actually advertising for this or campaigning for this, many people have gone and seen the Dholavira site. We know the Lothal, perhaps it must be the first naval dockyard which we can speak of. Rakhi Gadi is a recent excavation done by Professor Shinde and others. It's given some new insights talking about the so-called Aryan and Dravidian kind of a concept and things. There are some new findings from this Rakhi Gadi excavation, which Professor Shinde has extensively published in journals like Science and other things. Now, the Indus people actually, we know they developed Indus scripts. Unfortunately, the Indus scripts have yet to be deciphered. The urban town, they were perhaps the best possible urban town planners. If you really look at any of these cities, could be Dholavira, Harappa, or Mohenjo-daro, the kind of a planning that went into building these wonderful towns with residential complexes. They had a wastewater management system. You had a wonderful drainage system, sanitary. All these things, actually contributed to the welfare of that beautiful, wonderful Indus Valley civilization. There were some very standardized system of measurements, whether it is the weights and measures or the bricks. All these things, they had standard measurements for. And incidentally, there was a measurement known as angulum. The concept of measuring angulum has transcended and it's gone forward right up to the Taj Mahal. In fact, Professor R. Balasubramaniam, just before his untimely death, he was actually researching about the measurements used in the Taj Mahal, which date back to this period. That's how the advanced the Harappan civilization was. We also had some very interesting things like perpetually moving machine. It's something which is inconceivable. But then, this was conceived way back in 624 Christian era. The standing testimony to the metallurgical marvel or the achievement of India stands tall in the Qutub complex. It's called the Delhi Iron Pillar. It's also known as the Restless Wonder, the name given to it by Professor Anantaraman. It's remained restless for more than 1600 years. I talked to you about the Bakshali manuscript. Incidentally, before the Illuminating India exhibition, the Bakshali manuscript, which I showed you, which was a part of the Illuminating India exhibition, was believed to be somewhere dating to about 7th century AD or so. But what the London Science Museum did is, since the exhibition was coming, they decided to take a carbon dating of this, and now this Bakshali manuscript actually goes back to 2nd or 3rd century, the Christian era. So you can imagine the decimal place value system with the number 0 actually predates the 500 Christian era. So similarly, there is something known as a cotton gin. It is one of the most advanced technological innovation from India, because the technology used in cotton gin is perhaps what paved the way forward for industrial revolution. This is not my statement. This is a statement made by one of the greatest of scholars. His name is Joseph Needham. He spent about 3 decades actually researching the contributions of China. So he produced 30 volumes known as Science and Civilization in China. People all across the world, the best of libraries, keep these volumes and refer these volumes. So in some of these volumes, Joseph Needham has talked about the technological contributions of India. The enduring architectural construct. This is something which, perhaps even 10 lectures will be insufficient to talk about the glory, the contributions of Indian in architecture. Fortunately, courtesy the WhatsApp or social media, we find one of the most extraordinary architectural monuments which nobody is aware of. They keep coming time and again into circulation in this WhatsApp group. We only know about the Chalukyas or the Hoysalas, or for that matter, Gupta period or the southern temples. But then there are innumerable others, the architectural constructs which are there all across the country, not just the ones which we are aware of. In addition to this, zinc is one very complicated metal. For extracting that, we need a very precise metallurgical knowledge, because the melting point and the boiling point of these two is very, very narrow. So one needs a very precise metallurgical knowledge to smelt zinc, and Indians smelted zinc to industrial scale. About 13th, 14th century, 12th, 13th century, they were producing huge amount of zinc, which I'll be talking about in future. In addition to this, there are other contributions like the alcohol distillation. There's a Scotch brow, crank, drawbar, milling and spinning wheel. We had this, the water lifting devices known as Chekkavattaka, and actually these Chekkavattakas went to the Arabs, and there they were known as Noria. So even today, I mean, if you really go into some of the villages, you still find these pots attached to the wheel for taking taking the water. So these things are known as Noria. But in Ananda Kumaraswamy and others have talked about this, and which dates back to about 3rd century. So in nutshell, science and technology in India closely intertwined with culture and philosophy, tempered with wisdom, has flourished for centuries. However, strong influences of foreign invasions have subdued it, and its contributions have largely remained inconspicuous. I mean, I'm just showing you some of the wonderful artifacts of the Harappan period. For example, you can have a look at these beautiful artifacts which have been excavated from different sites from the Harappan times. This is, I talked to you about the zinc smelting. Even today, if you really go to Rajasthan, close to Udaipur, you have a place known as Jawar. There are 3 places, Agucha, Jawar, and Dariba. These are the places where a lot of mining activities was going on. These things are, you can see you can see it here. This is one of the coasties. There are so many things like that. You can see it in artistic impression of how the zinc smelting coasties are the furnaces. Each of these furnaces were able to produce zinc at industrial scale. This is a photograph of an excavation. If you really look at this artistic impression of the furnace, and William Champion is actually credited to be he's got the credit or the patent for zinc smelting. If you really look at his drawing of the patent and compare it with this drawing, you will automatically realize that actually William Champion, you kind of copied the design of the zinc smelting from India. But like most of the things, Indians never had a concept of copywriting or patentship, and we were not into expansionism. This word expansionism comes quite often when you really talk in particularly what's happening with China. The India was never ever an expansionist thing. So we were very comfortable, convenient with our own heritage, so that it's for our own good. Now, these are some of the wonderful other objects, metallurgical objects, which speaks of the technological prowess of India. What you see here is what is known as the Damascus swords or Damascene patterns. These Damascene patterns are, it's not just the technological prowess that is inbuilt into this, but the scientific aspect or the metallurgical knowledge that one needs to understand to produce these. One of the most outstanding swords was done by India. Then you have this, the Nataraja or the Chola bronze. It's done through what is known as the Sire Purdue process or the lost wax method. The lost wax method or the Sire Purdue process, the historicity of this can go back to the Mohenjo-daro times. I'm sure you must have seen the dancing girl of the Mohenjo-daro, which is there in the National Museum. That the dancing girl perhaps was made of a process known as lost wax casting or Sire Purdue process. From all these highs, this is something, we had such great heights which we had reached. But then what happened when when the Britishers went back and when we attained independence? In 1947, if you really look at this slide, during the period from 1700 to 1947, India was having a contribution of about global contribution in terms of GDP, 25%. But then when Britishers left us, from 25% of global contribution, we came down to 2.5%. Perhaps it is for this reason, the Oxford had organized one beautiful debate. It was called as it was a debate centering around whether the Britishers have to say sorry or they have to give reparation. So in that Oxford debate, Shashi Tharoor actually participated, talks about the loot. In fact, the word loot also has been looted from India, and it is now entered into the lexicon of the Webster Dictionary. And he has published one beautiful book. It's known as An Era of Darkness, where Shashi Tharoor talks about the great achievements of India, what the Indian GDP contribution was prior to the colonial rulers coming to us, and then what happened during the period of the colonial Raj. They actually talked about civilizing us, but then actually they literally looted us. When they left us, they left us with poverty, hunger, deprivation. There was a stage when the Britishers left us that we had to wait for shiploads of to come from America under the scheme known as PL 480. We were waiting for wheat to come from USA so that we could feed millions of people. Now we are a surplus nation. Yesterday, in fact, you must have read one of the article written by Ankaleshwar Iyer. He talks about if you really see the food produce storage, we have more than 3 or 4 times what is necessary, even if there are God forbid some kind of a we run through droughts kind of a situation. Not only in this is the COVID period, the new norms, giving virtual lectures, etc. Vaccine is one thing which people are talking about. If the global community is to be vaccinated, they have to depend on India. There are two. Each one of you are aware there is an institution known as Serum Research Institution, which is actually producing. Everybody is aware of that. AstraZeneca produced out. Oxford vaccine is going to be mass produced by this institute from Pune. There is another institution known as Bharat Biotech, who is also producing the Covaxin. These are two companies, pharmaceutical companies, who can mass produce vaccine, and actually this will serve as, for vaccinating the world community. You need only these people. In fact, they were the two companies which actually helped the World Health Organization for immunization using for the rotavirus. So the kind of from that stage of deprivation, we have come to a stage where the world now looks up to us. So why did the people stop looking? Completely forgot about our contribution, because there were several centuries of foreign rule which we went through. That is one of the reasons why nobody knows what the Indian contribution was. Fortunately for China, I talked to you about Joseph Needham. He spent 3 decades to actually research about China and produce those 30 odd volumes. And even today, Joseph Needham Foundation is continuing to produce volumes after volumes on the contribution of science and technology in China. These volumes are there all over the world, across the countries, in most of the best possible research labs and universities. So people know about the Chinese civilization and their contribution. Unfortunately, no such single contribution of science and technology of India is available. So perhaps not many people are aware. And when we make some claims, people do tend to say that, India perhaps did not contribute. So things are beginning to change because of lots of researchers who are taking interest in finding going into the exacting standards of research that is necessary for making the claim that India was a contributor. I really talked about this, if you go back in about 1,000 years back, Indian subcontinent per se was contributing about 28 to 29% of the world GDP, with 32% of the world population. But then when right into the 1860s also, the Indian GDP from when the Britishers came in, we had about 25 to 28% of the GDP contribution, and we came down drastically during the colonial period. And when we attained independence, our contribution to the global GDP was about 2.5 to 3% only. Indian contribution, again, the world started recognizing the Indian contribution, not because of us or because of the Britishers, primarily because of the Arab scholars. Arabs had a wonderful scientific and technological relationship. So did the Greeks as well. So a lot of Arab scholars came to India to study this, and they took back the knowledge from here. For example, the number system. Most of us were, I told you, reading about the decimal place value system as Arab number. After the fall of the Constantinople, actually the Renaissance started from Italy. So most of the world contribution is generally recognized as the contribution which comes from Europe, primarily the Greek and Roman civilization, or fast forwarded to the Renaissance. But that is not the case. I'm just giving you, since the time is very short, I will just run through the glimpse of ancient Harappans. I told you, talked about the metallurgical things. Eye needle, you have a small eye in the needle. That's a very technologically very important thing to achieve. The dancing girl, or the lost wax process, is again a technological marvel in itself. Zinc, I told you about the zinc smelting that was happening. It actually started from 3rd century or so, but particularly in the 12th or 13th century, there was industrial level of production of the zinc. And it was only in the 18th century that patent ship for the zinc smelting went to European. Incidentally, one of the British Museum scholar by name Paul Craddock, along with our KTM Hegde and other Indian scholars, have extensively researched the zinc smelting that has happened in Zawar, and also have prima facie measured what kind of a volumes of zinc was being smelted in these coasties, or the smelting furnaces that are there. The iron and steel heritage, actually it goes back to about 1800. Since 1800 BCE, before Christian era, that we had the traces of iron in India. High quality iron and steel, and I talked to you about the Damascus or the Damascene swords. These are all very high quality steel which happened in India. In order to portray this to the people of India, what we did is the National Council of Science Museum decided to develop an exhibition on our science and technology heritage. Incidentally, these science and technology heritages exhibitions have also traveled to some of the countries, primarily USA, it has gone to China, it has gone to Russia. But many more such efforts are necessary so that the world recognizes that India has made a lot of contribution. I will just show you a glimpse of the photographs of our exhibition. This is an exhibition which is there in the National Science Center, Delhi. It talks from the Indus Valley period. In fact, we start from the Mahargad civilization, which goes back to about 7000 BC. From that period right up to the era of about 1700 or so, just about the end of the Mughal period. This entire gallery speaks about the contributions of India. For example, if this is the Konark Temple, besides the iron bars that have gone into this wheel, it also shows the prowess Indians had on the astronomical knowledge that they have. Because even in this Konark wheel, it served as some kind of an astronomical observatory for time and dates. So, I mean, this is, we created a diorama to present the technological achievements during the Harappan period. Every single thing, whether it is, the science, technology, or innovation happens only when we are self-sufficient in food. How do we be self-sufficient in food? Only when we have granaries to store the extra food that we generate. Or we need to have, for health and hygiene, we have to have water and the drainage system and the lavatories and things like that. Harappans were extremely good at that, and each one of us are now beginning to understand the contributions of Harappans. The Dholavira, for example, is a standing example. So is the Rakhi Gadi and other Lothal and things like that. This is another glimpse of the things which, with right at the center, we have the Delhi Iron Pillar, because this is a standing testimony to the technological prowess of India. I will be speaking a little bit more on this because I don't think we'll have time to rush through, because it's too short a time to cover that. I'll just rush through this. This is another glimpse of, we're talking about the architecture, the coins, for example. We have coins from the Mauryan period, the Gupta period, all across. When you talk about the coin, different, whether it is die striking or all different types of producing the coin. Again, that talks about the technological progress. Glass, for example, Copia. Copia is one of the places where you had glass melting going on. So, and architecture is something, it is there across. I told you about whether it is the Brihadeshwara temple or the Belur Halebid, or you have this Ajanta Ellora, all across, right up to the Mughal period, where we have of course, the famous Taj Mahal and things like that. In addition to that, we have this wonderful cannons. You can have it. Look at the cannons there. The cannons are something which are spread across the country. Again, we have this traditional crafts. where Indians excelled in traditional crafts. We are again coming back to the period where the crafts becoming sought after thing. People are coming from across to actually collect the art pieces from excellent Indian craftsmen. Even in, for example, if you really look at the temples in Hoysala, you have the frescoes which talk about the musical instrument that were there. Talking about the musical instruments, C.V. Raman example, he actually publication on, he said on the percussion instrument, and he said that in percussion instruments like mridangam and tabla, the harmonics that are produced by Indian percussion instrument like tabla and mridangam are far purer than what is produced by the Western instruments like Congo and things like that, which has noise in the harmonics. So everything, if you look at, you will have profound contributions of India, which is visible across in most of the monuments, and if you go to any museum, you will see a trace of these achievements. This is another gallery in Dharwad which talks about this. I will rush through this one. Then again, and now let me come to a little bit of iron and smith. Like I told you, the Indians excelled in iron and steel up to the Mughal period. Even when Mughals were ruling, I think India was perhaps the highest producers of steel, iron and steel in the world. Again, some of the standing examples are Delhi Iron Pillar, the Dhar Iron Pillar, the Sun Temple in Konar, and there is another iron pillar in Koduchuri in Karnataka, which is again 8.7 meters tall. So all these things are standing examples of this. From this, how do we come to know that these are the contributions of India? The historical references in terms of the Indian contributions come from Vedic references. There are Western scholars also, like for example, Porus and Alexander. From their reference also, we get to know that what the contribution was. Artha Shastra of Chanakya extensively talk about the contributions of metallurgy. And then, of course, the archaeological excavations, which are there, quite a number of them. I'll just have some water. Since the time is short, I'll just rush through. In Rig Veda, for example, the term ayas talks about, there is a term used for iron. Similarly, we have Krishna ayas and Lohit ayas talking about, copper and iron. And carbon dating to this day, it is definitely known that 1800 BCE, we had traces of iron and technology in India. Then, we have Herodotus, who is talking about in 480 before Christian era, he's talking about the iron-tipped arrows were used in India, and they came from India to this one. There is similarly, Indian-made swords were actually presented to the ambassador in India. And there is also another thing that when Alexander was fighting Porus, generally when the victor actually takes gold and silver and diamonds as gift. But whereas what Alexander was gifted was 30 talents of wood steel. So wood steel was such a precious thing. About 26 kg of steel ingots was gifted by Porus to Alexander, which was actually measured much more than gold and diamonds and things like that. So that was the kind of a skill that Indians had in terms of producing this sword steels or the wood steel. Then you have, I'll rush through because the time is very short, different literary evidence to talk about the presence of iron and steel. Terms like quenching, Arthashastra talks about this. There is a term known as Khaddalakshanam. Rasaratna Samuchaya talks extensively on the alchemy of the metallurgy. This is another evidence, right from, for example, 1800 BCE in Lucknow. You have Chandoli, 1600 to 1500 BC. So let me rush through this one. What the Britishers wanted to also understand us from the tribal point of view, to understand us, they studied the tribal traditions, the technology traditions of the tribes. And one of the things that they studied is agarias. Even today, agarias are known for producing one of the best possible iron. The tribal iron furnaces continue to be there in Jharkhand and Madhya Pradesh and things like that. So it's most unfortunately Takshila and Nalanda, which were one of the most profound learning centers in India, they got burnt out. So along with that, everything that we had perhaps got burnt out, and most of us, the Indian society was believed in oral traditions. So not many recorded material was there for the world to recognize what the contribution was. But then things have changed now. What you see here is, the Delhi Iron Pillar, which it is in the precincts of Qutub Minar. It dates back to about 420 AD or something like that. This is again iron from the Konark Temple here. This is the iron pillar. You can see the which is, going back to 4th century and talking about the iron pillar, which is about 6 meters tall. You can imagine the technical knowledge. From all this thing, I would particularly talk about the last stage. When the Britishers were actually building tracks they wanted to produce steel. They were producing steel. Jamshedji wanted to actually start his own iron and steel factory. So he went and asked the Britishers whether I can produce steel. That was in prior to, I think, around 1902 or through. So, but then what, very interesting, one of in order to produce steel, they have to get convince him to give him a permission for starting steel. What he said, do you mean to say that Tata's proposed to make steel rails to British exacting specification? Why? I will undertake to eat every pound of steel rail if they succeed in making. This is the kind of a ridicule that the Britishers used to make for all Indians. Those very people, we were one of the people who were producing metallurgical wonders like the Delhi Iron Pillar. And when Tata, with all his might and sincerity, went to take permission from him, he said, the steel needs exacting technical standards to produce. And if you can produce that, if Indians can produce that, I'm ready to chew that. That is the kind of an insult that he had made. The rest is history. Unfortunately, Jamshedji was not alive when the TISCO, the Tata Iron and Steel Factory, which is now known as Jamshedpur, started producing steel in the year 1907. Perhaps it is for this reason, not for this reason, definitely, the wheel has turned one full circle. Ratan Tata, when he was the chairman of the Tata Sons, he actually acquired Chorus. Basically, it is the steel company, the major steel company of British. So it was acquired by the Tata Steel. So we went one full circle, in a very short span. This is again, because we have very less time, I just wanted to show you evidence of where all the findings of iron are, so that, one has to understand that when you make some claim, it has to be based on some evidence. That's why I'm giving you all these references. These are all from archaeological excavated sites. Again, this is one of the very rare furnaces which was excavated by Jamkhedkarji in a place called Naikund. This has been researched, and what kind of iron was produced in this. This dates back to about 700 BCE. Again, since time is also very short, I don't think I'll be able to cover every aspect of the iron and the Delhi Iron Pillar. I will just mention a few, little bit here and there. The Delhi Iron Pillar, I'll just rush through. Everybody is under the impression that it was there in Delhi. Delhi Iron Pillar was not there in Delhi. Actually, the Iron Pillar, the first research that went into what the Iron Pillar is made of was actually by a British metallurgist, Robert Hadfield. In the year 1912, he started researching about that. Then subsequently, the National Metallurgical Laboratory also started researching in the year 1961. Then, Professor Anantaraman, he's one of the doyen of metallurgy in India, who researched this iron pillar and came out with a beautiful book, Restless Wonder, a study of the iron pillar, which was published in 1996. All these studies actually started talking about what this iron pillar is. How do you date this? There are two things which have been used to date this iron pillar. One is the inscription that you see here. These are the inscription, and also the study of the coins. from these two, from the study of the inscription and from the study of the coin, it is now fairly well established by Professor R. Balasubramaniam. He has done monumental research on this and produced a book, New Insights into Delhi Iron Pillar. This iron pillar is definitely dated to about 400, between 400 and 450, and perhaps this was this was done during the period of Chandragupta II. Originally, these are the things, these are the Gupta period coins. Study of these Gupta period coins and their interpretations with the Greek, where they had some exchanges. All this, it was arrived at the iron pillar was made somewhere in the 4th century, 4th to 5th century. I will rush through this one. This was the iron pillar was actually originally located in Udaygiri. Udaygiri is also a place which is which has an historical significance. In fact, iron pillar was located at a place in such a way that during the summer solstice, the shadow of the iron pillar is to fall on Vishnu. So it is now known as Udaygiri, but it's actually earlier called as a Vishnu Padagiri. Maybe was this because of this? We don't know. People can actually go and have a look at that. So it was not only the technological prowess, but also there was an element of astronomical knowledge as well as to where originally the iron pillar was located. I will rush through because we don't have time. From Udaygiri in Madhya Pradesh, this was brought to Delhi during the Iltutmish, the Islamic rule. When they invaded us, they used to loot and plunder. And one of the things that it intrigued them, it was very surprised that what is this? They were not able to understand this. So they took this all the way from Udaygiri to Delhi. I talked to you about the standardization in measurements. So it is divided into 3 parts. One is what is there in the bottom, main body of the iron pillar, and the last one, which is known as the bell capital. Since we don't have time, I think I'll have to rush through. So this is the scholars have also studied to understand how this iron pillar must have been forged. There is something known as a horizontal forge welding. Using this technique, or what is drawn here, this is an artistic impression. The iron pillar measuring about 23 feet was actually, this was using a technique known as horizontal forge technique. This is one of the most beautiful thing. Besides the technical know-how of forging an iron, you also needed to be artistically very elegant. This was one of the best part of Indians. Wherever you go, be it architecture or any metallurgical or any object, there is an element of art embedded in this. When art gets embedded into a product, it becomes world famous. For example, even today, Apple products, Steve Jobs products catch the imagination of the world, primarily because there is an element of art, innovation, and technology embedded into these products. So were Indian products. So these are all artistic impressions. Since we don't have time, I'm sorry. I think because I was told that we should keep about 5 to 10 minutes for question answer, and I think we are now close to 5:50 or so. I will just rush through this. One thing I would like to talk about is if you really go to Delhi, you will find that there is nothing on top of the iron pillar. Professor Balasubramanian, during his research, he came to the conclusion that what perhaps must have been there on top of the iron pillar must have been this chakra, Ashok chakra, what we call as. This is one of the caves in Udaygiri. This is Vishnu here, and you find the chakra here sitting on top of some kind of an object. This is the sculpture. So from this, he has inferred that what may have been fitted into this on top of the iron pillar must have been the Ashok chakra. So I will not, of course, most of the modern cars, automobiles, when they are there in cities like Mumbai, which is there is a lot of moisture here, there is humidity here, there is salinity here. So the iron and steel starts, there is a lot of rust that happens. Old cars, which they were using iron body, they get rusted. Whereas the iron pillar has remained rustless for 1600 years. So you can imagine the kind of a technological prowess that Indians had. Wood steel, I've already talked to you briefly about the wood steel, but woods was another extraordinary technological contribution of India. One of the scientists, Verhoeven, what he talks about wood was the first high quality steel made anywhere in the world. According to reports of travelers to the east, the Damascus swords were made of forging small cakes of steel that were manufactured in southern India. This steel was called as wood steel. It was more than 1,000 years before steel as good was made in the West. What he says is 1,000 years before actually the best of steel was made in the Western countries, Indians were making such quality steel. So I think with this, again, the Tipu swords were made of wood steel. I will not talk. Okay, I'll spend another 1 minute on this. One of the greatest of scientists is Michael Faraday. Michael Faraday, I'm able to speak to you primarily because of electricity, internet, and things like that. Or for that matter, motor, electricity, the relation between magnetism and electricity, all these things is courtesy Michael Faraday. Michael Faraday was also a great chemist. Faraday's laws of electrolysis, I'm sure all of you must be studying that. Although he was a great chemist, he actually started trying to make woods ingots similar to the woods ingot that Indians were producing, but he was not successful. He has actually one of the woods experiment that he conducted. I think this is there even now in the collections of the Britishers. So with this, I think I will stop at lecture that I've given. I've largely depended on Professor Balasubramaniam, a very close friend. He's from IIT Kanpur. He died at a very young age of 47 years. He did some profound research. Professor Ranganathan from IISc, and he's presently with NIAS. Professor Sharada Srinivasan, she's also with NIAS. Professor Bibha Tripathi, Dr. Anil Bishwas, late Dr. Baldev Raj, Paul Craddock of the British Museum. Most of these people actually have come and delivered lectures also in the science centers. So with these few words, because the time is running short, I know I rushed through a lot of these things. I'm sure I hope I've been able to do some justice to the topic of metallurgical heritage of India. Thank you. Azadji?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the very wonderful, fascinating, interesting, and the thought-provoking lecture today, sir, and for highlighting in a very short time a glimpse of the Indian technological heritage that we possess from last 5,000, and in fact, if we can extend it from last 1,000,000 years since the start of the Stone Age. So thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for a very, very interesting lecture, and thank you for also providing a very detailed in your presentations. You moved through the different slides, and with all those galleries, you displayed and gave a glimpse of how this technological heritage is being promoted and the outreach activities are being done in India. So really, sir, India was in fact a champion in the field of this technology, and in fact in the discipline of science and many other subjects as well. And we have such a long history of this technology, this mathematics, metallurgy, and many other. And in fact, you have highlighted all of them, sir. We have received a few queries from our curious audience, who in fact many of them were live and were continuously putting up their comments. We have received one query from Srimati Manita Pandey, ma'am. She has asked how we can differentiate a digital museum from virtual museum.
Virtual, what I suggest is, I don't know if Manita Pandeyji, if you are anywhere near Banaras, there is something known as a virtual experiential museum, which has been developed at on the ghats of the Ganges there. I would request you to please go and visit that. The Banaras is a beautiful blend of the history, modernity, our own culture, all that thing in a one small, I think it's Manmahal, if I'm not wrong. In Manmahal, the Archaeological Survey of India has developed this with which has been developed by the National Council of Science Museum. All that culture, socio-cultural, religious, scientific, technological aspect of it, which the city of Banaras or Varanasi represents, has been shown in a virtual manner. Basically, you're not physically seeing this. Virtually, you're seeing it on a digital platform, experiencing it. When you talk about digital museums, you're actually recording and keeping the objects, digital objects and things like that, which, for example, if you really go to the website, our website, and have a look at that, you can call it as some kind of a digital museum. Basically, your collections which are shown on a digital platform, whereas virtual museum is actually you're experiencing it. Although you are not physically seeing it, you're virtually experiencing it as we see it in reality.
Thank you, sir. We have one more query from Manita Pandey, madam. She's asking what measures should be taken today to protect the technological heritage of India. And if you allow me, I can put a little more my own curiosity. So, sir, if you can put up some recommendations, how we can inculcate technological mind or scientific mind in modern India. In fact, everyone learns technology from the very beginning of childhood, but how we can encourage our young generations to in fact learn in a more curious way and to put up their curiosity in terms of startups, and they encourage them in the entrepreneurship, technological entrepreneurship, and in many other ways.
First and foremost, I should appeal to all the teachers and students to start going to the museum. Most important, or archaeological sites or things like that. Go and see the objects. When you look at the objects and see to what period it belongs to, you start respecting that object, respecting the period to which it belongs. Another aspect of it is, for example, preserving the technological aspect of it. The Ministry of Culture is taking a lot of leadership in this. All the museums, primarily which are coming under the Government of India, and most of the collections are being digitized. There is something known as a Chetan software under which they are digitizing the objects. For example, Indian Museum must be having more than 200,000 objects. Imagine all these objects are digitized and information on these objects are available on the digital platform. People can research on that. The more you research, I think the people will start understanding. And there are people like us, science communicators, who keep talking about these objects and communicating the achievement to the people.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for putting up your insights on this very important and relevant topic, and in fact, in highlighting how India excelled in the field of technology since very ancient age, and how this was we have a lot of literary references of those technology, in fact, and the foreigners referred to this technological heritage of India in their literature as well. And the earliest references that comes from Greek, and then from the Arabs, one of the special mentions must be Al-Biruni, who wrote in long detail about the technological heritage that India possesses. And then we have in modern India, we have scientists and a whole team of institutions and which excels in technology. So thank you, sir, for your thought-provoking lectures today. At the end of this evening session today, let me convey my vote of thanks to everyone present today in our lecture. First of all, let me extend my vote of thanks and my warm greetings on behalf of me and on behalf of Heritage Society, first to Shri Prasad Khened, sir, for his insightful lecture and for taking out time to join us today in our evening session. Thank you so much, sir. I would also like to express my profound gratitude to our audience who were live during the whole session, and they put up their questions and comments during the session. So thank you all of them for encouraging us in our academic endeavors. Thanks to our Virasat Mitra and our chairman and director general of Heritage Society, Dr. Anantastus Dwivedi sir, and all of the staff and officers of Heritage Society who who are continuously helping us in organizing this weekly talk program. And in fact, this Virasat Talk program has came up as a great initiative in the field of this history and heritage, where we all heritage lovers continuously engage in debates and dialogues, and we get an opportunity to interact here every week. So once again, thanks to all of the followers, our audience, our guest, our eminent speaker today, Shri Prasad Khened sir, our all the staff and officers of Heritage Society. Thank you everyone for joining us. Stay tuned with Heritage Society. We will have more lectures in coming weeks. Thank you to everyone.
I
Thank
think
you,
we are
sir.
on time. 7 o'clock was what I think we wanted to end. I think we're perfectly on time. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
so much.